you obtained records for numbers that you believe belong to Jeffery Williams. Is that right? And I'm talking now, I want to hone in, right? I'm speaking specifically in January of 2015.
That's right.
Okay. You obtained numbers that you believe belong to Jeffery Williams.
Yes.
Okay. You obviously, as we've discussed before, obtained numbers that you believe belong to Kenneth Copeland.
Yes. Kenneth Copeland, I believe that was somebody else. But when you say you obtain, I'm speaking. What I'm saying is I reviewed records. So either I or a DA's office investigator obtained them, or some law enforcement investigator obtained them, or if I obtained them via subpoena, et cetera.
Sure. And I don't. And listen, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And when I'm saying you obtained, I'll tailor it. You had a chance to review.
Yes.
Okay. You had a chance to review phone records that you believe belong to, as we talked about before, Mr. Demekian Garlington. Is that right?
There were records for Demekian Garlington. Yes, but they didn't cover the night of the murder. But yes, there was also, and I think we talked about this already, a number that I found in Mr. Copeland's phone records that I believed was Demekian Garlington's, but I never got to probable cause.
So here's my question, right? Focusing now on Jeffery Williams, the number you believe belonged to Jeffery Williams.
There were a few.
And Kenneth Copeland, all right?
Okay.
There are, and I'm talking now about the night of the murder, January 10, 2015. There are 0 calls. I mean, 0 as in nothing, none, zilch. 0 calls between Kenneth Copeland and Jeffery Williams. Isn't that true?
That sounds correct to me. There's obviously, the phone records can be voluminous. Mm-hmm. So I'm going off of, my memory from, I feel like I would have remembered something like that. I'm also refreshing my recollection by looking at my report from the excerpts I placed in the report. And and specifically, I included Kenneth Copeland's phone records, the relevant portion from the night of the murder. And matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now. Yes, there are no phone calls to Jeffery Williams.
Okay. What about phone calls between Demekian Garlington and Jeffery Williams?
No, I don't believe so either. No.
0 phone calls.
That's right.
Okay. Wiretaps. Did you have the ability to seek any wiretaps in this case?
No. We certainly had the ability to seek it, but we never did.
Okay. And I'm talking specifically, and you said we, mm-hmm. I'm speaking specifically now about Jeffery Williams. No wiretap of any phone. You never sought any wiretap of Jeffery Williams' phone, did you?
No, we never did.
I want to, so we've talked about what you've done in regards to the Donovan Thomas matter. We've talked about this tour bus shooting thing that you didn't really have anything to do with. I do want to jump back and ask you a question on a name that you mentioned earlier, Sammy Davis.
Okay.
Okay. Sammy Davis was someone that you spoke to.
He was.
Okay. That was someone who was supposedly at the location or somewhere close to the location on the when the incident occurred. I'm talking about January 10, 2015, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you had a conversation with him in 2016?
I believe it was 2017.
2017. Okay. Without saying what that person said, actually, strike that. One moment, please, Judge. You mentioned earlier, Mr. Sprinkel, Twitter records that you were able to, I guess it's called X now, but Twitter records you were able to retrieve in regards to individuals in this case, or that you looked at, true?
That is correct.
Did I hear you say that you reviewed Jeffery Williams's Twitter records and Twitter history?
I was aware that Mr. Williams had a Twitter page. I don't recall how closely I examined his Twitter page, though.
Okay. So you would not be in a position to tell this jury that there's anything about his Twitter page that you reviewed in regards to January 10th of 2015?
Well, if I did, it's not something that made an imprint on me such that I remember it. So I would say no, there was nothing.
Right. And because you are charged with reviewing and making determinations about what you think is important or pivotal in the case, if there was something there, that would certainly stick out in your mind.
Yes.
And it does not.
That's right.
I may have one moment, Judge. I may be, give me one moment, please. Before I sit down, I do have something that I wanted to jump back to. Remember we talked a little while ago about Mr. Copeland giving a statement about a conversation between he and Garlington the night of the incident?
Yes.
Okay. You recall from listening to Copeland's statement that he references that the night of the incident, he's supposedly at the McDonald's and he makes a phone call to Garlington, right?
Yeah. That's right.
And you recall from his statement that Copeland also says that he ended up in a vehicle with Garlington and McMullen. You remember that?
I do.
Okay. Now, looking back again at judging the veracity of the statements people give to you, specifically now Copeland, you were able to determine that at the time when Copeland says that he is in a car with Garlington, that Garlington's phone, or the phone you think is Garlington's phone, is actually calling Copeland's phone at that time. You remember that?
No, I'm not sure. You must be referencing Mr. Copeland's cell phone call data records, and there's a phone call at a specific time that somehow occurs at a time when I don't know. Is that what you're talking about?
That is. Let me see if I can break it down anymore. Copeland gives a statement saying that he spoke to Garlington on the night of the incident, right?
Yes.
Copeland gives a statement saying that at some point he's in a vehicle with Mr. Garlington and Mr. Demise McMullen. True?
That is correct.
All right. Looking at the phone records, right, at the time when Copeland says he is in a car with McMullen and Garlington, you actually see phone calls between Garlington's number and Copeland's number when they're supposedly in a car with each other, right?
Well, so first of all, what number are we talking? Would you like me to say which number I believe may have been Demeke and Garlington's?
Sure. Go ahead and tell me what number you're talking about.
It was 404-621-0102. That would have been the pretty much the only number during that immediate aftermath of the homicide with which he was in contact. And there were routed calls. Well, I won't get into that, but I had some what I believe to be limited tower location data for that 404-621-0102. But the calls, there was an inbound call where that 404-621-0102 rather, 621-0102 called Kenneth Copeland at 7:51 p.m. and 36 seconds on January 10th, 2015.
Right.
Now, you'll see, now again, if in fact that was Mr. Garlington's number, there were some routed calls that were between, but a routed call is not necessarily a communication between the two numbers. It could be a call, an attempted call that wasn't completed. So, but as you would have to ask Mr. Copeland, about those phone calls and where he was, and if Mr. Garlington was actually in the car with them, or he was inside, the convenience store or the McDonald's or wherever it was they said they were. I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, okay. Let me ask you if you know this. All right. Again, we agree that according to Copeland, McMullen and Garlington are in a car together, right?
That's what Mr. Copeland said. Yes.
Okay. And there is a phone call. Let's not talk about Copeland. Let's talk about Garlington and McMullen.
Mm-hmm.
There is a phone call between Garlington's phone. That's the one that you've referenced, the 0102, right?
That's right.
what you believe is Garlington's phone, right?
Is that yes?
And there is a phone call that connects between Garlington and McMullen's phone at the time when they're supposedly in the car together, according to Copeland.
That, again, I don't know where they, I know that they were in close temporal proximity, or spatial proximity, I should say, at the time of these, according to Mr. Copeland. As to whether they were actually in the immediate confined space and they hadn't parted ways temporarily and one is calling the other, I don't know. You would have to, again, I don't know if they were within 3 feet of each other at the time of these phone calls. All I know is that they were within 3 feet. They were very close to each other during this time period, at least temporarily, and where they were, if they were walking around a parking lot, I just don't know.
Safe to say that verifying anything that Mr. Copeland says is true proved to be a Herculean task for you, huh?
Well, I just tried to find things that were obviously inconsistent. Like, for example, with Spencer Wright, where I just looked at the video and I saw nobody was at the bus stop. I said, well, that's obviously a pretty big inconsistency in a statement. That's all I was trying to do with Kenneth Copeland. And I didn't, as far as the phone records are concerned, I didn't see anything that was wildly inconsistent or that completely contradicted him at all.
Something you said earlier when we were talking about the phones, you said that you're not an expert, but you have pretty significant experience with kind of looking at cell tower locations and if not plotting, at least trying to make a determination, reading those records.
Yes.
To determine where a particular phone may have been at a particular time, right?
That's right.
And it's fair to say, again, without asking you for an engineering or technological type answer, that those records that you look at that give you the distance or location of a phone is not an exact science. It's within miles, right?
It could. Potentially, yeah. It could be. In a populated area with a lot of cell phone towers, it'd be very odd to use a tower that's miles away from you. That may be something more in a rural area that you might see. But one thing I will say is no, it's not an exact science.
Yeah. And
particularly the records at issue here was just, from what I remember, it's just tower usage and sides of the tower.
Right.
Meaning you're using this tower and you're using the antenna pointing this way. That's a big area.
And of course, we're talking about the city of Atlanta, which is very populous. Mm-hmm. And we're also talking about things like a call bouncing off of one tower or being routed to another tower because of the traffic, the cell tower, the cell traffic at that time. And the bottom line is that, you could be if you're trying to pinpoint where one phone is at a particular time, you could be a block off, a mile off. It all depends.
Yes.
True.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have.